The night was as cold as a corpse's embrace when I first stumbled upon the case of Jeremy Stein. Minneapolis, my adopted city, had donned its winter coat early that year, and the chill in the air seemed to whisper dark secrets. I'm Cyrus Kade, freelance investigative reporter and professional troublemaker. The kind of guy who sticks his nose where it doesn't belong and usually ends up with it bloodied. But that's the price you pay when you're after the truth in a world that prefers comfortable lies. It was late November 2024, and I had just wrapped up a story on corrupt city officials, the usual song and dance of greed and power. I was nursing a lukewarm coffee in my dingy office when my police scanner crackled to life. A cold case unit was being assembled, focused on disappearances from the early 2000s. One name caught my ear: Jeremy Stein. The name tickled something in the back of my mind, a half-remembered headline from years ago. I fired up my ancient computer, its fan wheezing like an asthmatic in a dust storm. A few clicks later, and I was staring at the face of a young man frozen in time. Jeremy Stein, 20 years old, vanished from St. John's University in Collegeville on November 7, 2002. Left a poker game, never made it back to his dorm. Poof. Gone. Like a magician's trick, but with a much darker punchline. I leaned back in my creaking chair, the gears in my head turning faster than the rust bucket computer in front of me. Why now? Why reopen this case after all these years? My journalistic instincts, honed by years of chasing stories others were too afraid or too lazy to pursue, were screaming that there was more to this than met the eye. I grabbed my coat, a battered fedora that had seen better days, and headed out into the Minneapolis night. The city was a neon-lit maze of secrets and lies, and somewhere in its twisted streets, I was sure I'd find a thread that would lead me to the truth about Jeremy Stein. My first stop was the Minneapolis Police Department. I had a contact there, a world-weary detective named Sarah Donovan. She owed me a favor after I helped clear her brother of a false accusation last year. I found her at her desk, buried under a mountain of paperwork. "Kade," she said, not looking up. "What rock did you crawl out from under this time?" "The one marked Truth, Donovan. Heard you're dusting off some old cases. Jeremy Stein ring any bells?" She finally looked up, her eyes narrowing. "How did you— Never mind, I don't want to know. What's your angle, Kade?" I shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. "Just curious. Young man vanishes without a trace, case goes cold for over 2 decades, and suddenly it's hot again? Smells like a story to me." Donovan sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's not just Stein, there were others around the same time. Vanessa Rich, Herman Moore, Thomas Klein. All young, all vanished within days of each other." My eyebrows shot up. A pattern? Maybe. Maybe not. That's what we're trying to figure out. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Come on, Donovan, give me something. You know I'll find out anyway. Might as well be from you." She glared at me for a long moment, then reached into her desk drawer. She pulled out a file and slid it across to me. 10 minutes. Then this disappears, and so do you. Got it? I nodded, already flipping open the file. Inside were photos, reports, and timelines. Jeremy Stein smiled up at me from a college ID photo. Young, bright-eyed, full of promise. The kind of kid who had his whole life ahead of him until someone or something decided to rewrite his story. As I scanned the documents, certain details jumped out at me. The last sighting of Jeremy at a party in Mettencourt Dormitory. The short walk he never completed to his own dorm in St. Maur. The extensive searches that turned up nothing. But it was a small note scribbled in the margin that really caught my attention. Possible link to online activity? I looked up at Donovan, who was watching me closely. "What's this about online activity?" She shook her head. "Nothing concrete. But there were some unusual findings when they examined his computer. Photos of unidentified men. The tech guys are still trying to make sense of it." The gears in my head started spinning faster. In my experience, when young people vanished, the internet often held clues. Sometimes it was the last place they truly existed. I closed the file, my mind racing with possibilities. "Thanks, Donovan. I owe you one." "You owe me several, Kade. Now get out of here before I change my mind and arrest you for interfering with an ongoing investigation." I tipped my hat to her and slipped out of the precinct, my head buzzing with questions. As I stepped into the cold night air, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned, scanning the shadows, but saw nothing except the usual late-night crowd hurrying home. My next stop was clear. I needed to visit St. John's University in Collegeville. It was time to walk in Jeremy Stein's footsteps and see what secrets the campus might be hiding after all these years. The drive to Collegeville was long and dark, the highway stretching out before me like a black ribbon. I used the time to mull over what I knew. Jeremy Stein, a promising student with a bright future, a poker game on a cold November night, a short walk that should have taken minutes, but instead stretched into eternity. As I pulled into Collegeville, the first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the eastern sky. St. John's University loomed ahead, its buildings a mix of modern architecture and old-world charm. In the pre-dawn light, it looked peaceful, almost serene, but I knew better. Every place has its secrets, and universities are no exception. I parked my car and started walking the campus, retracing the steps Jeremy might have taken that fateful night. The air was crisp and my breath fogged in front of me as I moved from Metten Court to the bridge near Stumpf Lake. Standing on that bridge, looking out over the dark water, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. How many times had this lake been searched? How many divers had plumbed its depths, looking for any sign of Jeremy? As I stood there, lost in thought, a voice behind me nearly made me jump out of my skin. "You're not from around here, are you?" I turned to find an elderly man watching me curiously. He was bundled up against the cold, a woolen scarf wrapped tightly around his neck. "No, sir," I replied, trying to calm my racing heart. "I'm a reporter, looking into an old case, Jeremy Stein. Did you know him?" The old man's eyes clouded over. "Jeremy?" "Yes, I remember. Such a tragedy. I was teaching here when it happened. The whole campus was in shock." I pulled out my notebook. "Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" He nodded, and we spent the next hour talking. He painted a picture of Jeremy as a bright, ambitious young man, popular, involved in campus activities with a promising future ahead of him. But as we talked, I sensed there was something the old professor wasn't telling me. Was there anything unusual about Jeremy? I probed gently. Any behaviors that seemed out of character in the days leading up to his disappearance? The old man hesitated, his eyes darting around as if checking for eavesdroppers. There was something. A few days before he vanished, I overheard Jeremy arguing with someone on his phone. He seemed agitated, scared even. I asked him if everything was all right, but he brushed it off. Said it was just a misunderstanding with a friend. I jotted this down, my pulse quickening. This was new information, something that hadn't been in the police files. "Did you tell the police about this?" He nodded. "Of course, but they didn't seem to think it was important. Said lots of college kids have arguments with friends." I thanked the professor and continued my tour of the campus. As the day wore on, I spoke to more people. Current students who knew the story of Jeremy Stein as a kind of campus legend. Staff members who had been there in 2002 and remembered the frantic searches and the gradual crushing realization that Jeremy might never be found. But it was as I was leaving the campus that I had my most unsettling encounter. I was walking back to my car when I noticed a figure standing in the shadows between two buildings. At first, I thought it was just another student, but as I got closer, I realized the person was watching me intently. I changed course, heading towards the figure, but as I did, they turned and ran. I gave chase, my heart pounding as I raced across the campus. But whoever it was, they knew the layout better than I did. I lost them in a maze of buildings and walkways. Breathing hard, I leaned against a wall, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Why would someone run from me? What were they afraid I might discover? As I drove back to Minneapolis that evening, my mind was a whirlwind of theories and questions. The missing photos on Jeremy's computer, the mysterious argument overheard by the professor, the figure watching me on campus. How did it all fit together? Back in my office, I spread out everything I had gathered. Police reports, witness statements, my own notes. I started connecting threads, looking for patterns. As the night wore on, fueled by cheap coffee and determination, I began to see a picture forming. Jeremy Stein hadn't just vanished. He had been running from something, or someone. The next few days were a blur of activity. I called in every favor I had, chased down leads, and dug deeper into Jeremy's life in the days leading up to his disappearance. I discovered that he had been spending an unusual amount of time in the university's computer lab in the week before he vanished. What had he been doing there? I also learned that several of Jeremy's friends had noticed changes in his behavior. He had become secretive, jumpy. One friend reported that Jeremy had asked to borrow money, something he had never done before. But it was when I started looking into the other disappearances, Vanessa Rich, Herman Moore, Thomas Klein, that things really started to get weird. On the surface, there seemed to be no connection beyond the timing. But as I dug deeper, I found a disturbing pattern. All of them had been active on the same online forum in the weeks leading up to their disappearances. A forum that, by all accounts, shouldn't have existed in 2002. It was as if someone had retroactively inserted this digital footprint into their lives. I was so engrossed in my investigation that I almost missed the signs that I was no longer just an observer in this story. It started small. A feeling of being watched, mysterious hang-up calls in the middle of the night. But then things escalated. One night, as I was working late in my office, I heard a noise outside my door. I opened it to find a manila envelope on the floor. Inside was a single photograph. A picture of me standing on the bridge at St. John's University. On the back was written a single word: stop. I'd like to say I was brave enough to ignore the warning, but the truth is, it shook me. I'd been threatened before, but this felt different. This felt impossible. How had someone gotten that photo? I hadn't seen anyone else on that bridge that morning, but I was in too deep to stop now. I doubled down on my investigation, working around the clock, and slowly, painfully, I began to uncover a truth so bizarre, so terrifying, that at first I didn't believe it myself. The disappearances weren't random. They weren't the work of a serial killer or a human trafficking ring. They were something much, much worse. I found references in ancient texts, in folklore from around the world, stories of people vanishing without a trace, of time itself seeming to hiccup and skip. And always, there were reports of strange lights, of technology behaving in impossible ways. The truth, as best as I could piece it together, was this. Something had opened a door between our world and somewhere else. Somewhere that didn't play by the rules of our reality. And sometimes that door would open and swallow people whole. But why these specific people? Why Jeremy Stein and the others? That's where things got really twisted. It seemed that they had stumbled upon the truth. That online forum I had discovered, it wasn't just a forum. It was a beacon, drawing the attention of whatever lay on the other side of that door. As I sat in my office, surrounded by evidence of a reality-bending conspiracy, I realized I had a choice to make. I could publish what I knew, try to warn the world, but who would believe me? And more importantly, would publishing the truth just paint a target on my own back? Or I could bury it all, walk away, try to forget what I had learned about the true nature of our fragile reality. In the end, I did what any self-respecting investigative reporter would do. I wrote it all down, every last detail. And then I hid my notes where no one would think to look. Because here's the thing about doors, they don't just open one way. And I have a feeling that someday, somehow, Jeremy Stein and the others might find their way back. And when they do, they're going to need someone who knows the truth. So if you're reading this, if you found my hidden cache of notes and recordings, then you're now part of this too. Keep your eyes open. Question everything. And whatever you do, don't ignore those strange lights in the sky or the whispers in the static of your radio. Because in a world where college students can vanish without a trace and impossible forums can exist in the past, who knows what other secrets are hiding in plain sight. It's been 3 days since my last broadcast. 3 days of running, hiding, and questioning my own sanity. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me fill you in on what's happened since that night in my office. After that chilling whisper and the sound of my own muffled scream, I found myself elsewhere. A place that defied description, where the laws of physics seemed more like gentle suggestions. Colors that shouldn't exist, geometries that made my eyes water just trying to comprehend them. I don't know how long I was there. Time didn't work right in that place. But somehow, I managed to find my way back. Or maybe, it let me go. Either way, I woke up in a ditch on the outskirts of Minneapolis, my clothes reeking of ozone and my head pounding like I'd gone 10 rounds with a prize fighter. The first thing I did was check the date. 3 days had passed. 3 days that I couldn't account for, just like Jeremy Stein and the others. The realization hit me like a freight train. I had crossed over. I had seen what lay on the other side of that impossible door. But unlike Jeremy and the others, I had come back. And that fact terrified me more than anything else. Because now I knew for certain they were real. The entities behind these disappearances, the ones manipulating reality itself, they weren't just some figment of my overactive imagination. They were out there, and they knew I knew. I've been on the move ever since, staying off the grid as much as possible. It's not easy in this digital age, but when you've seen what I've seen, you learn to get creative. I'm recording this from a payphone in a part of town that's seen better days. The kind of place where people mind their own business and don't ask questions. It won't be safe for long, but it'll have to do for now. As I stand here, watching the neon signs flicker and the shadows dance, I can't help but feel like I'm being watched. Not by anyone human, mind you. No, this is something else. Something that lurks just at the edge of perception, waiting for me to let my guard down. But I'm not going to give them that satisfaction. I've come too far, seen too much to back down now. The truth about Jeremy Stein and the others needs to come out no matter the cost. I've managed to piece together more of the puzzle since my experience. It turns out that St. John's University isn't the only hotspot for these kinds of disappearances. There are others, scattered across the country, across the world even. Places where the fabric of reality is thin, where the impossible becomes possible. I've been in contact with others who've had similar experiences. Survivors, if you can call us that. People who've glimpsed behind the curtain and lived to tell the tale. We're few and far between, but we're out there. One of them, a woman named Elena, told me about her own encounter. She was hiking in the Appalachian Mountains when she stumbled upon a cave that shouldn't have been there. Inside, she found petroglyphs that depicted beings that looked nothing like anything that's ever walked this earth. But it was what happened next that really chilled me to the bone. Elena said that as she was examining the cave drawings, she heard a sound behind her. When she turned around, she saw Jeremy Stein standing at the entrance of the cave. Only it wasn't really Jeremy. Not anymore. His eyes were wrong. Empty, yet somehow full of a knowledge that no human was meant to possess. He spoke to her, but the words weren't in any language she recognized. And then, just like that, he was gone. Vanished into thin air. Elena's story confirmed what I had begun to suspect. Jeremy and the others, they're not just missing. They've been changed, transformed into something else. Foot soldiers in a war we didn't even know was being waged. But what's the endgame? What do these entities want? That's the question that keeps me up at night, that drives me to keep digging despite the danger. I've been poring over ancient texts, obscure folklore, even declassified government documents, and a pattern is starting to emerge. Throughout history, there have been periods of increased disappearances, of strange phenomena that defy explanation. And each time, it coincides with major shifts in human civilization. The fall of Rome, the Industrial Revolution, the digital age, each of these paradigm shifts was preceded by a wave of unexplained vanishings and bizarre occurrences. It's as if these entities are harvesting something from us. Knowledge, emotions, souls, I don't know, but I intend to find out. Hold on, something's not right. The air feels charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. I can see something forming in the air in front of me, a distortion like heat waves on a summer day. But it's the middle of winter and, oh God, it's opening, the door, it's here. I can see through it. I can see, no, it's impossible. I'm back. I think the door or portal or whatever it was, it's gone, but not before I saw through it. And what I saw, it changes everything. I saw Jeremy Stein, but not as he was. Not as the young college student who vanished over 2 decades ago. He was different, older, yet somehow ageless. His eyes, they were full of stars. He spoke to me, not in words but in images, in feelings. He showed me things, terrible, wonderful things. The truth about our reality, about the nature of existence itself. We're not alone in the universe, that much I already suspected, but it's so much bigger than that. we're not alone in reality itself. There are other dimensions, other planes of existence, all layered on top of each other like pages in a book. And sometimes, just sometimes, the pages stick together. That's when the doors open. That's when people like Jeremy Stein slip through the cracks. But here's the real kicker. The thing that's got my hands shaking as I hold this phone. It's not random. None of it is. These entities, these beings from beyond, they're not taking people by chance. They're choosing them. Selecting them for some greater purpose. Jeremy showed me glimpses of that purpose. A cosmic game of chess with entire realities as the board. And we, all of us, every person who's ever lived or ever will live, we're the pieces. But we're not just pawns. We have the potential to be more, to evolve, to transcend our physical forms and join in this grand, universe-spanning game. That's what happened to Jeremy and the others. They weren't taken. They were elevated, chosen to become players instead of pieces. And now they're coming back. Not to stay, not to return to their old lives, but to prepare us, to ready humanity for what's coming. Because something is coming, something big. A convergence of realities, a cosmic event that will change everything. And we need to be ready. I know how this sounds, believe me I do. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, felt it with every fiber of my being, I'd think I was crazy too. But it's real, all of it, and that's why I can't stop. That's why I have to keep investigating, keep spreading the truth, because the more people who know, the more who are prepared, the better chance we have when the final door opens. So, if you're listening to this, if you've stuck with me this far, I'm begging you, stay alert, question everything. And if you see something strange, something that doesn't quite fit with your understanding of reality, don't dismiss it. It might just be the key to our survival. Looks like my time's up. They're coming for me. Whether it's the cops or something else, I can't say. But I'm not afraid. Not anymore. Because now I know the truth. And so do you. This is Cyrus Kade, signing off. Remember, the game is afoot, and we're all players now. Good luck. You're gonna need it.